and also for you to acquaint yourself with a lot of the staff that will be teaching you on the course. So I'll say a few things and then we'll go into more of the fun-packed activities and the kind of things you'll be learning on the degree. So I just wanted to say a few things, things which you should be aware of about the law school. And I've talked a lot of these things in our open days, and some of you may have attended those. I think the key thing for me and the salient points I'd like to mention about the law school is where the law school fits into legal education at this moment in time. So many of you will know that legal education has changed, and the ways in which individuals or yourselves will qualify as solicitors will be very different in the years ahead, particularly for you joining at this time. If you're going to qualify as a solicitor, you'll have to sit a new set of exams called the Solicitors Qualifying Examination, and we'll talk more about those when you enroll in September. But the key thing about the SQE, this new qualification, is that law schools need to be well prepared to deliver that training. And I'm very proud that the University of Wolverhampton has been not only one of the leading schools who've led on the SQE discussions, but we've developed a curriculum that reflects and incorporates some of the training you need to then move on to another set of training to actually achieve that. So that's a really important factor. We also have a lot of practice-based learning, so my colleagues will talk more about it, and I'm going to also invite, obviously, Margaret Walsh, who will be your head of department for undergraduate studies, to talk a bit about that later on. But we have a lot of practice-based learning. So what we don't do is we just don't pack you in lecture theatres and just teach you lots of law. What we realise is that you need to have employability at the end of your degree, and with that in mind, we give you opportunities to work in things like our legal clinic at the Wolverhampton Town Centre. We work with the local city council, where you can actually get involved with advising individuals as to their benefit rights. We have worked with the court systems with a legal companion scheme where our students go in. And more recently, something we're really proud of is that we have partnered nationally with something called the Windrush Clinic. Now, some of you may know from the news the Windrush scandal, where a number of people from the Caribbean were denied their immigration status, not because it was their fault, it was because of that timing where the government had not kept accurate records, and they were being detained and in some cases deported back to the Caribbean, which is an awful thing to do. Our students, particularly you, will have the opportunity to work and advise. The reason I'm saying that is that you'll also have to pass something called the Solicitors Qualifying Examination Stage 2. And at the moment, all this work will contribute to the training that you need. So we are working with a number of organisations like the Clinical Legal Education Organisation and the SRA to identify what's happening there. And a couple of other things I should say before my colleagues then get into the fun-packed activity for this afternoon. In 2020, our student satisfaction survey, something called the NSS, which all students have to complete, for the LLB was 91% of our students were satisfied with our course. Something we are obviously very proud of. And we are a school that has a very one-to-one approach with our students. We have an open door policy, and you'll see that from the colleagues who will be talking to you today. So I think this is a real opportunity, obviously, to join a school that is on the move, a school that will care for its students, and we will put employability at the heart of everything we do. So that's enough from me as head of school. The point is not for me to talk today, but it's my colleagues. So it might be just useful very quickly before we all start to introduce who we are in this room today. And then what we'll then do is we'll have a series of activities in the course of the next hour and a half, where we'll take you through some really interesting things. So I'm going to hand over now to Margaret Walsh, who is head of department for undergraduate legal studies, who will be your head when you enroll in September. And she will introduce herself. And then Margaret, you then can pass on to the next person.
So thank you very much for that, Sitninder. As my colleague has just said, I have overall responsibility for the undergraduate section of the law school. So you will have lots of dealings with me. And as Sitninder has also said, we do things quite differently, I think, here at University of Wolverhampton. We really do take pastoral care very seriously. We're very aware of the challenges that lots of our students have. And so we have a kind of a multi-layered approach to pastoral care. So as well as having your lecturers to go to for support, we also have a designated skills coach, an academic coach who looks after the the first year students, and we have a year tutor who takes responsibility for each of the year groups. So Lynn, for example, who is going to be doing a session with me shortly, she has responsibility for level 5, and I have responsibility for level 6. So I think that we're just going to go around and introduce each of ourselves. So I suppose I should also say what my main teaching areas are, which are criminal law, contract, but also skills, and I also oversee the dissertations. So I'll hand over to Lynn to introduce herself. Oh, Lynn, you're just on mute.
Sorry, everybody, I always do that. My name is Lynn Ellison, and when you join us, I will be teaching you at level 4 on criminal law, which is a great subject. We'll be having a look at that in a bit. And also, as Margaret said, in your second year, I will be your course year tutor as well. So look forward to meeting you. Hand over to, who's next? Ria.
Thank you, Lynn. My name's Ria Hill. I'm one of the lecturers in the law school. Like Lynn, you'll see a lot of me at level 4 because I'll teach you for English legal system and contract law in semester 1, and then I'll also teach you in semester 2 where we do the law of tort. And later on in the session, Shana and I will be giving you a little bit of a taster of law of tort. So I hope you enjoy the session today, and I'll pass over to Shana.
Hiya, I'm Shana. So similar to Ria, I teach on a few different modules at level 4. So you might have me for English legal system, contract law. When you progress to level 5, you might also have me for alternative dispute resolution. So you'll see me floating around as well.
And then lastly, if Maria could introduce herself.
Hello everyone, my name's Maria and I'm your student transition teacher. You'll see a lot of me at level 4 and then I disappear ready for level 5.
That's great. Thank you very much everybody for introducing yourself. The first session that we're going to do with you today, Lynn, if you would like to just get the presentation ready, is we're going to be looking at something in criminal law.
Okay, so everybody, we would like you to participate in this, whether you are staff or student. Anybody can participate. It would be great if people can unmute the microphones to speak to us, or if you must, write something in the chat. But in any event, we want to ask you some things and we need you to respond to us. So I'm just going to share my screen.
So please be confident to participate. It's a shared learning experience, and as we always say to the students, no question is a silly question and no suggestion is a silly suggestion. So please do participate.
Okay, everybody. So the first thing is to think about the train guard. Now, the train guard was in the news as a job last year because does anyone know why were they striking train guards generally? Can anyone tell me? Anyone brave enough to unmute the microphone? Staff, you lot as well, not just students?
Right, well I'll help Lynn out here. There was a dispute over whether or not train guards were needed on all trains, because as we'll see during the course of this presentation, I'm sure you're all familiar to some degree with travelling by train, and whereas we can all understand the need for a train guard on an intercity 125 with perhaps 14 carriages that barely manages to fit in the station, you also have small chugger type trains with perhaps 1 or 2 carriages, and the issue was whether or not those smaller trains needed a train guard, or whether that role could be undertaken by the train driver, because those trains, as you'll appreciate if you travel locally, it only takes 15 minutes to travel on the fast train between Wolverhampton and Birmingham, but it takes a good half an hour on the slow train.
Okay, so can anyone tell me what is the job of the train guard before the train leaves the station? What is the one job that we can say is ultimately something they need to do before the train can even move?
Think about why the train guard is there. Why do we have a train guard? Is he there just to say hello to people, help them with their luggage? He will do those things, but what do you think is really
well done,
important?
Rebecca. Thank you for taking one for the team there. Rebecca's saying ensure all passengers have boarded safely. Absolutely. So that is ultimately the role, isn't it? Is to make that decision. Is it safe to say that this train can now move? Okay, so we're just going to move on a slide now.
In the case that we're going to look at on the next slide, we want you to have a little bit of background information. So the case that we're going to be looking at involved a gentleman called Christopher McGee, and he had been working as a train guard since 1992. So he had very considerable experience. And what we want you to do is to look at the actual photograph of the train and a young girl that formed the circumstances of this criminal case. And then while you're thinking about that photograph, Lynn and I will tell you some more things about the case itself. So Lynn, if you move along to the next slide.
I'm going to ask you some questions and then Margaret is going to tell you some facts. So just have a look at this. It's not the clearest of photographs because it's taken from CCTV. But I just want you to have a look at that. Imagine you're the train guard. Your job is to make sure that everything is safe before the train goes. Now then, have a look at the picture. Now, what can you see? Any first thoughts about what you can see here? If you don't want to unmute yourself, just put something in chat. Staff, students, anybody, what can you see?
Other than a train, so I'll start us off.
Yeah, there's a train. I'll ask you this, Margaret, is that a big intercity train or just a little thing that you'd call a chugger?
No, that's definitely a local chugger train, and I think we can see it well enough to see that it's only got 2 carriages.
So yeah, Yakub is saying, is there meant to be a line? So can you see where the girl's feet are, Yakub? Just immediately behind there will be a yellow line, which is a kind of indication of danger that you really shouldn't be stepping beyond that point, not unless you're getting on or off the train. It's just a little edge, little gap to keep you back. So you are right, yeah, that there's a line there. It's not very clear on this photo. What do you think is happening? Just looking at the picture, what do you think is happening? Have you got any idea at all?
She's putting herself at risk.
Good.
Is that you, Yakub?
Yeah.
Oh,
Hi.
well done. Absolutely. She's putting herself at risk. Why would you say that she's putting herself at risk?
Well, she's gone. First of all, I noticed that she's gone behind the line, but also if
Yeah.
the train's moving and she's like putting her hand there, then she could like injure herself.
Yes, you're absolutely right. If it's moving, I'll just tell you that at this precise moment, it's not moving. It's
All right.
not moving. It's stationary. Do you think she's still putting herself at risk?
I'm not too sure.
I think though, Yakub, that you've made a really good point, that there is a very well placed line there, and everybody knows that you are not supposed to step over that line unless you are going to get on board the train. So I think that point that you made, if you were a defence witness, is very significant indeed.
But
Can I ask you? Oh, sorry, Yakub. You go
I was just
first.
going to ask, would there be any argument like saying as if the people who like own or control that station, could they have done more to help the passenger who was putting themselves at risk? Would that be an argument or no?
It would absolutely, and the key is this, that the one person who's responsible for any kind of break on what's about to happen is actually the train guard, right? So the train guard can see what you can see, and the train guard can and must say if it is safe for this train to go. Now, do you think as the train guard that it is safe right now for us to say that the train can go?
No.
No. And what do you think will happen if the train slowly now starts to move? What do you think might happen? There's a couple of things that might happen. There's a positive outcome and a negative outcome.
She might move out the way if she's a sensible girl.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% would have thought, if I was the train guard, I'll be honest with you, looking at this scene in front of you, I would think she will feel the train move underneath her hands and will step back.
Or she might just let the train carry her away.
Yes, that's probably the worst.
And if you want the details of what I think is going to happen to her, I'm fine to go on.
But do you think, look where she is though, look where she is in relation to the carriage. She's only about halfway down it, isn't she? If that train pulls away very slowly, what do you think is the worst that could happen?
I don't know, because if you've ever stood near a train, there's a reason why that line is there, because of the force coming off the train, the gases that are being expelled from the train that are so harmful, and that force alone will make her fall.
Yes.
And it's physics. She's going to go one way or another depending on her balance.
I mean, Shauna's saying she could at least trip, and I think you might think, oh my gosh, she might hurt her knee. You know what I mean? Because it looks like she might just fall there, possibly.
But don't forget, folks, that with a small train like this, the train guard may well have blown a whistle. So, you know, there would be a clear warning that the train was going to move. But as Lynn has pointed out, at this point in time, she does have her hands on the window of the train. But just to try to take the defence line here, this type of train would not move off at the type of speed, at the high speed that, say, an intercity train would be moving away at. So I think that that's significant here.
So the train guard said it's safe to go. He's been a train guard since 1992. He's sized up the image in front of him here, and he says it's safe to go. And so he gives the signal and off goes the train. Now, Margaret, do you want to furnish them with some details about what happened next?
Now, the person that you can see in the photograph is a young girl called Georgia Varley, and she's 16 years of age, and she's completed her GCSEs, and she's been out with her friends, and she has taken alcohol, and she's also taken a drug called MCAT. Now, do you think that the train guard would expect a 16-year-old girl to be drunk and have taken drugs?
No.
No, I agree with you. And thank you, Rebecca. You are another very useful defence witness here. I think that it's really quite difficult to say, well, the train guard should expect people to be getting on the train, although it was late at night. It was 11:30, I think. But this girl was out with her friends, and she got off the train and then got back on again and then got off again, sort of the way that people might do when they're saying goodbye to their friends. And so one might think that, having seen that, that then she was, although her hands are on the glass of the train, that she was kind of almost just saying bye-bye, you know, a wave, albeit that her hands were on the train. But as Lynn started to explain, the options here are either that she steps back or jumps back, as Maria suggested, or that she slips, trips, as Shana suggested, or the worst case is that she doesn't slip back, doesn't trip, but actually falls forwards and is dragged under the train and is killed. And unfortunately, it is that happened here to Georgia Varley. And because somebody had been killed, that would give rise to a possible case of a homicide. Now, clearly, it's not going to be murder, because that needs an intention to kill or an intention to cause serious harm. There's no unlawful act here, so that leaves an offence of gross negligence manslaughter. Now, this is maybe something that you've heard about. There've been a couple of things in the news where gross negligence has been talked about. There's been the Hillsborough tragedy, and there's also been the Grenfell Tower. But clearly, it's always going to be easier to establish fault in a circumstance where there's just one person involved. So either the guard here is at fault or he isn't, and none of us would be trying to say that there's no fault whatsoever. But we'll now move on and have a look at what are the requirements for gross negligence manslaughter.
Yes, so if you were on the jury, the judge would have explained to you the requirements that have to be proven to you beyond a reasonable doubt by the prosecution, and these are then. There first of all needs to be a duty of care between parties. Now then, do you think that there is a duty of care between the train guard and the passengers? What do you think?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely there is, yeah. And that duty has to be broken in a way that risks death. Now, this is a particular job. You know, we often say that lots of us have jobs where we can't make a terrible mistake, people can't die, but some people do have jobs where they can make a terrible mistake and people can end up dead, and this is one of them. Being a train guard is one of them. So he's breached his duty of care to her to make sure that it is safe for the train to go in a way that risks death. It then has to cause the death. And when we're learning about gross negligence manslaughter, we'll be teaching you about what's called causation. In fact, as a matter of fact, did it cause the death? And causation in law, can we hold them legally responsible for the outcome that's happened? And then we end up with the main point of gross negligence manslaughter, which is the big question for the jury. Now, think about what we've explained to you about the circumstances of that case. And then we have to answer this question, which is it so grossly negligent that it should be classed as a crime? You're on mute, Mark.
Sorry, I'm on mute. And the interesting thing about this is, first of all, as Lynn has gone through with you there, is there a duty? Absolutely. We hold our hands up that there was a duty. It was his job at the end of the day. Was it breached in a way that risked death? Well, somebody's died, so there must have been a risk of death. Clearly, his actions caused her death, but the crux of establishing liability is making that decision of whether it was so grossly negligent that it should be classed as a crime deserving of punishment. So no one is trying to say that he wasn't negligent here. And if I take the role of Christopher McGee's defence lawyer, I would certainly not be trying to say that he was not at fault. But what I would be trying to say is that the jury, whilst acknowledging that this was a tragic error made within a couple of seconds, that split-second decision to let the train go, a one-off lapse of judgment after this man had an exemplary record as a train driver going back to 1992. But in fact, in law, it is down to those 12 people sitting on the jury to listen to the evidence, to hear how that evidence plays out. And they then have to make that very difficult decision whether this person's conduct was actually criminal. Now, what I would be saying here is, you know, Christopher McGee has probably raised money for lots of charities, is a lovely guy, you know, he's probably got a lovely family, a diligent worker, but he was having a bad day, and tragically that resulted in the loss of life to Georgia Vardy, who is the little girl here in the picture. In fact, the jury, after a 2-week trial, did unanimously find Christopher McGee guilty of gross negligence manslaughter. There's a few things that the judge said that I'll share with you in a minute, but are you surprised at that? And in fact, Christopher McGee was sent to prison for 5 years.
I'm not really surprised because it is his job at the end of the day. And if someone's died because of his actions, it just means that he isn't doing his job properly.
Absolutely, Yakub, and I couldn't agree more. He wasn't doing his job properly. And there are lots of cases, not that I want to scare you from going off to your dentist or doctor, but there are lots of tragic cases where medical professionals make the wrong call and end up killing somebody. But we're very reluctant to find them guilty of gross negligence, even though their mistakes also have a risk of death. In fact, here, the judge, Mr. Justice Holroyd, said, "You didn't intend to kill or even injure her, but you displayed an appalling disregard for her safety, and he paid for your criminal negligence with her life." But that appalling disregard for her safety was a few seconds of making the wrong judgment call. But ultimately, his job was the safety, as I think a couple of you said at the beginning, the safety of those passengers. And it was entirely down to him. You alone determined whether the train remained stationary or began to move. Your decision and your action determined whether George Avali was safe from risk. Do you all think that he should be sent to prison for this?
I don't. I'm going to put it out there. I don't, because
I don't.
a few of us said that maybe she would step back.
Yeah, that's what I think as well, Maria. I would have thought train will move, she'll step back, it'll be fine. That's what I'd have thought.
The photograph shows that the lighting wasn't that good, and although it was late at night, she is a young girl, and although young girls do go out and you know, drink, etc., she had got on and off the train, and so, you know, we hear the expression about someone being legless, and I think that there didn't seem to be sufficient evidence, although I think that the jury, seeing the footage, were convinced that they could tell that she was drunk. And so I think that that will also have weighed on the mind of the jury. But I'm interested in the fact that at the beginning, even though we didn't prompt you, you were all quite keen to show that actually she too was at fault. She was over that white line. And I think that this case does demonstrate the really high standard that is imposed on people like train guards. And, you know, frankly, I think it would put people off being a train guard on reading this case.
I think Yakub said at the beginning, it needed to be, oh, she was putting herself at risk. I think that was the phrase that you used, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that she was putting herself at risk, which absolutely is the case. Now, if everybody could get hold of a screen, a phone, a laptop, something like that, and go to a website called menti.com, and I'm going to put it in the chat, and this is how you spell it. Menti.com.
And the reason, folks, that we're doing this is just to show you that we do use different ways to engage you with subjects when you come to us as first years. So we won't be just talking at you. Okay, so I need somebody just to let me know whether or not it's actually taken us through. And the code is 27018384. Everyone join, please.
So far, Lynn. I'm in.
Are you in?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And it's teasing me with the picture of a burger.
I'm in.
Right, is everybody in? You all in? Oh, we got quite a few in.
It doesn't let me in yet.
Has it let you in?
It just says get ready to play.
Oh, okay, it's let you in. I just need to press the question. Okie doke. Okay, right. Ria, it's not letting me do the question. It's doing it now.
Yeah, I've got it now. Oh.
So only one of these, the person was found innocent.
Not an easy question, folks, is it?
So I can give you anything.
They do all sound bad.
They do sound bad.
I'm almost positive I've got that wrong.
I've got that wrong.
They're all real cases.
And they're all all terrible.
And they're all dodgy, yeah. Oh, let's have a look then and see what we've got. Right, so then, nobody thought that the man who sold Indian food with peanuts in it while claiming it was nut free got away with it, and you're absolutely right, he did not get away with that.
That was
Two
quite
people,
recent, wasn't it, Lynn?
it was quite recent, yeah.
That's probably why it's all stuck in our memories.
And also because he'd had somebody already eating in his restaurant that had nut allergy and had nearly died, and they warned him. And he carried on regardless, so he didn't care. Now, the one on the right there is really local to me. I saw this fire. It was a hell of a fire. So, yeah, it's right by where I live, and the man had stored fireworks in an unsafe manner, leading to an explosion. Now, he was injured himself in this explosion. One of his members of staff was killed, and so was a customer as well. So, big firework factory fire. But he was found guilty. Now then, the apples. Now, most of you have said that that's the one. Now, this man, he was on holiday in the Maldives, sunning himself, and he needed some nice prize apples to go to the country fair. I think he had a cider company. So he'd left instructions for these young men in their 20s to get these prize apples, and they were stored in this massive container. And in order to stop them from getting rotten, there was hardly any oxygen in this container, and he said they needed to dive into it. So basically go and do yourself a scuba dive in a container of apples. Well, you can guess what happened when they're diving deep into a container with no oxygen in it. So he was found guilty. Now then, that leaves us with two, doesn't it? So selling toxic substances online as slimming pills, or the death of 95 people. There were, in fact, 96 in the end, but one was not charged because he died some time later in the Hillsborough Stadium disaster. And in actual fact, the one out of all of these incidents where the person was not convicted of gross negligence manslaughter is, in fact, the Hillsborough Stadium disaster.
Weren't they held a bunch of years after, though? 'Cause I'm a Liverpool fan, so...
Yeah, what it is that they were held, there's been a lot of cases over it, an awful lot of cases, and when you actually study tort with us, you will find this case coming up quite a lot actually in tort. It comes up in criminal law as well, but essentially there were a number of inquests as well, and it was found to be an unlawful killing of them. But as to whether this one particular man, who was the chief constable, was responsible in the sense of it being gross negligence manslaughter, the jury said no. Now, obviously, we weren't party to the evidence that they were, but there'd be a combination of factors, not just him alone, decisions that were made on the day, and also the state of the premises, because at the time, football stadiums were very, very different. And you couldn't just walk from the stands onto the pitch. There was a fence to separate you. And so, given all the evidence, the jury have decided that the answer to that question, is he so grossly negligent that he should be held criminally responsible for it, I've said no to that. So that is the one out of all of these where the person was not held responsible. So let's have a little look at this. Oh, Elsa, whoever that is. Who's Elsa now? Elsa was the fastest, and Ria, you've got a point there, Ria, well done. I deliberately got it wrong, just to let you know. Right, here we go. Right, now then, let's have a look. If you can remember, this is the last thing I'm going to do with you before handing over to our next group, but just any of the words that you can remember that came up when we were discussing establishing gross negligence manslaughter. Type in as many as you like.
I don't know if the slides have progressed for the students, but it's not progressed on my screen.
Can you all see?
I
Yeah.
can see the original question, Lynn.
Just the original question. Okay, let me just have a look and see whether or not. I'll tell you what we'll do. I will stop sharing the screen and then share it again, because that should bring you onto the right one, hopefully.
Yeah.
I just need to make that a little bit bigger, don't I? Do you know how I do that?
Fine, Lynn, we can see that quite clear.
Oh, you can see it, can you?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, somebody's put, I'm not good at this and I need food. I totally understand, absolutely. Right, so what we can see is that we've got some things that are coming up quite large. Duty of care and breach of duty and duty. Risk of death, cause of death. Train, I can see gross. I can see, I think, is that wrong? Care? Breach of the duty of care. Brilliant. And so what we can do is, I mean, you'll find, you know, when we're actually teaching, that we can sometimes use this kind of method to see what people's general thoughts are about something. You know, it could be, for example, that we could say to you, is there anything about this particular subject that you've struggled with? And then, you know, you would type in and then we would get a general picture as to how people feel about it generally. So we can actually use things like this to help us to test the pulse, if you like, of our audience. Okay. Right, thank you for taking part in that little thing with us.
Okay, thanks.
And we will now hand over to, who's next? Is it Ria and Shana?
Yeah, it's going to be Ria and Shana next. So thanks, Margaret and Lynn. So that's sort of like area of criminal law, but law spans quite a number of different areas. So we'll move on to elements of civil law. So over to you, Ria and Shana, and we can see your screen, it's working, yeah.
See, I was just about to ask that. Thank you very much. Okay. So for our session, what we're going to do is we are going to have a look at medical negligence, which we cover on the Law of Tort module, and we're going to have a look at compensation. Now, compensation, you'll actually deal with that on lots of different modules, and you'll come across it. And when you come to do modules like alternative dispute resolution at level 5, or you might like to do dispute resolution and contracted tort at level 6, then all of these will be really relevant to you. So first of all, the first thing that we want to find out from you is what is medical negligence? What do you understand about that terminology? Now, similarly to what Lynn's used, was going to use Slido. So if you just go on to slido.com, staff as well, please. And what sort of things? All you need to do is just put in that code and just type in some of the things that you think might constitute as medical negligence. To give you a little hint, a gentleman in Austria had the wrong leg chopped off during surgery last week. This is why in this country, when you go for surgery, they draw big arrows on you in marker pen to make sure that they've got the right limb. So if you don't want to use the Slido, you can put it in the chat box. That's absolutely fine. So we've got misdiagnosis, really good, yeah. Doctors cutting corners to save money and profit more, okay. Giving medication that you're allergic to, yeah, that one's a really common one, sadly, particularly in emergency medicine, if they haven't had time to have a look at your medical records or they haven't checked them. Having the right operation, yeah, absolutely. Wrong diagnosis, lovely. So medical negligence can cover all of these things. Is there any other thoughts anybody wanted to give before we move on? Oh yeah, really good. Too much medication. So if you're given the wrong dose of something, yeah, that's a good one as well. Well done. Misleading or ignoring lab results, yeah, that's another really good one. Lack of explanation, yeah, so if you're not given the correct information to help you make an informed choice when it comes to medical treatment. Doctor claimed to be a doctor but not a doctor. Wow, yeah, I'm sure that can happen as well. Not getting consent, absolutely. So if they don't get consent and they carry out medical treatment on you, that can be a battery. So you can actually have an action in civil law, and you can potentially have an action in criminal law under what we call MAME, if somebody carries out medical treatment on you without your consent. Medication that's not prescribed for you. So I suppose if they give you, if somebody's in the hospital is doing medication for 2 people and they give you the wrong one, then yep, certainly. Brilliant, we've got some lovely answers on here. Okay, so the definition of medical malpractice or medical negligence then is an unjustified act or failure to act upon the part of the doctor or healthcare worker which results in harm of the patient. So this is telling us that it can be anybody who's involved in medical care. So we quite often automatically think of doctors or surgeons when we think about medical negligence, but it can be anybody who's involved in treating patients. There's been cases where even receptionists have been found to be negligent in terms of the way that they have treated patients, or in terms of not passing information on, things like that. Paramedics can be found liable, nurses, anybody who's involved in care of patients can be found for medical negligence. Now, negligence itself is very wide-ranging, so we cover this in taught in semester 2, and we look at lots of different situations where negligence can occur, but I always think that medical negligence is probably the most interesting one. It's certainly the most gory one. If you're interested in the gory cases, medical negligence is certainly the one for you. So if we have a little look at a little scenario here, we can clearly see on the screen something terrible's gone wrong, hasn't it? This was something that we didn't pick up when we did our Slido. Things being left inside people during surgery is also one that can occur. So here we've got Mrs. Ahern, she's just had some abdominal surgery. And then we've got Dr. Smith here, who carried out the surgery. He's not having a good day, is he? So what do you think could happen? So, I mean, feel free to turn on your microphone or write in the chat box. What do you think would be the result of this sort of thing happening if instruments were left inside a patient after surgery?
Internal bleeding.
Well, certainly. So yeah, so it could cause further complications, couldn't it? So what can Mrs. Ahern do? What do you think she can do as a result of having this horrible thing happen to her?
Could she sue for any damages that have been caused?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what we're going to be looking at in this session, is the sort of damages that you can claim. So damages is what we call, is the proper term for compensation. So compensation is probably the more familiar term to everybody. So Mrs. Ahern would be able to make a claim for compensation. Now, Shauna, do you want to jump in with some information about how claims are made? Because I know that's your favourite thing, especially pre-action protocols.
Love a bit of pre-action protocols, me. So in practice, so civil litigation is kind of the practical area that you'll look at when you study law, how you actually go about issuing a claim. And the actual procedural steps in the process, what you have to file at court, the evidence that you have to collect, and of course go into trial. But what a lot of people don't realise when they sign up to do law is all of the stuff that happens before you actually get to the court, and that's usually where a lot of claims are actually resolved, and there's actually no need for court involvement and trials. And in particular with these types of medical negligence cases, I mean, you hear about the really gory, really horrific ones that have gone to court, but the reason you don't always see them is because they're resolved outside of court. And of course, that keeps the matter private, because as soon as you go to trial, everything in court usually ends up being public record, and the NHS don't want all their dirty laundry aired all over the news in the morning. So they tend to resolve disputes outside of court, and litigation is the absolute last resort. So there are different things that you would do before actually issuing a claim, things like alternative dispute resolution. So if you do alternative dispute resolution, that's a module we offer at level 5. You'll look at the different types of dispute resolution. So you've got mediation, negotiation, conciliation, arbitration, early neutral evaluation. There are loads of ways that you can resolve disputes. And some of the practical skills that we develop with you in particular is negotiating, and you get to actually have a look, and medical negligence comes up quite a lot, personal injury claims come up, road traffic accidents, all those sorts of things, and you get the opportunity to kind of negotiate with the other side, and you get given all the facts and you get to pull it apart and negotiate how much in damages you think your client should get, and you get to negotiate that figure. So it's a really, really interesting part of civil law, is actually the practical element of it and developing those skills. So we see a lot of that with medical negligence and PI claims. They're quite popular case examples that we look at for that area.
Thank you. So in terms of how you would make a claim, so if it's an NHS hospital, then you don't have any sort of claim in contract law for a breach of contract. If it was a private hospital and you paid for that treatment, then you would have a right to be able to claim under contract law because you'd entered into a contract. So this is something that we'll do in semester 1. We'll look at how the formalities of entering a contract and looking at all those formation of contractual issues. When it comes to the NHS, then you are looking at tort. So as Shana says, a lot of it doesn't actually get settled within court. Does anybody want to give a guess roughly of how much the NHS spends on dealing with malpractice claims in an average year? Anyone want to give it a rough guess? I can't see the chat box, Shana, so if you can keep an eye if anybody's...
Sukninda said 10 million. Rebecca said 4,000.
Oh,
5 million.
Oh,
go higher.
yeah.
Higher,
I think a couple of billion.
45 million.
45 million is a good guess, but 1.7 billion pounds roughly per year is what gets spent on dealing with malpractice claims. So the majority of those do not see court. Okay, the highest NHS payout on record that did go to court is £24 million, and that was for a little girl at Great Ormond Street Hospital who went in for a brain scan, and instead of injecting dye into her brain, they injected glue instead, and unfortunately has led to life-limited complications for her and means that she needs a lot of care. So it can be an awfully lot of money involved in dealing with these types of litigation. Okay, so what do we, when we're thinking about the aims of litigation, because when we teach you, we talk about what are the aims of this module, what are the aims of this topic. So when we're talking about negligence, and what are the aims of negligence? It's that we want to be able to compensate the claimant. So we want to be able to try and put that person back in the position they would have enjoyed had that not occurred. Okay, so had that terrible thing not happened, try and put them back in that position. Now, that's not always going to be the case, is it? So can you think of any other aims? So what medical negligence seeks to do? So obviously we want to be able to compensate the claimant, but can you think of anything else that that the litigation will try and seek to do? Staff, feel free to chime in as well. It is a tricky question.
So Lee Cooper has said improve quality of care. Absolutely, because if these claims are made, then it highlights potential issues, things going wrong, people not having the right training, and then they have to react to that, whether that's implementing new policies or putting new training and safeguards in place. They have to safeguard then against those issues. Good. Anything else?
Okay, I'll keep going. It was a difficult question. So the main aims are accountability, transparency, deterrence and compensation. So accountability, so one of the main things in negligence is that you want to make people responsible for the errors that they've made, so you want them to be accountable. When it comes to transparency, I think we expect a lot of public institutions for them to, when they're making decisions, we want it to be transparent, don't we? We want to know why something has happened, and we want it to be clear that that sort of thing perhaps won't happen again. And then deterrence, because as well as making a claim for compensation, what else might happen to the doctor or the medical professional involved? If there's been malpractice, what might happen to them on a professional level?
Well, they could get sacked.
Absolutely. So they could get sacked from the job that they're in. They could also be banned from ever being able to perform medicine again. Do you remember a few years ago there was a doctor who got found out that he'd been inscribing his initials on people's internal organs with a laser during surgery? He got sacked from his job but was allowed to continue practicing medicine, even though he was found guilty of maim, because he had maimed people, and it was that was only found out when somebody went in for further surgery and someone was looking at this patient's liver and they could see somebody's initials on there, which obviously there's no other way that that's going to have occurred without there being some sort of negligence of some sort of behaviour. Okay, so how do the courts then decide how much compensation that somebody's going to get? Okay, Shana, what are your thoughts? How do we work this out?
So there are a few ways that you can work it out. So you have to categorise, obviously, the damages first. So what kind of things do you think that you can actually claim for? So if you had a medical negligence case, what kind of losses do you think you're going to have suffered? So Ninda said loss of earnings, brilliant.
Really good.
So if you have to have time off work, you're going to want to be compensated for that. Any other ideas? Stress, Maria said stress, absolutely. It's going to be quite stressful. So there might be some sort of psychiatric damage.
The loss of quality of life.
Good, yeah, quality of life. So you never know if someone's going to have an issue that's then going to continue for the rest of their life, that's then decrease their quality of life. Rebecca's put if it's life-changing as well. Good. So in what ways might certain injuries be life-changing? What kind of issues might you have that makes it life-changing?
If you have like a car accident and then you go like paralyzed or something, for example, and then you can't go to work normally and do the stuff that you normally used to do.
Good, absolutely. So we've categorised damages in two ways, and we break these down into what we call special damages and general damages. And special damages are quantifiable, so you can put a number on it. So, when we talk about special damages, which types of things do you think fall under special damages? So things we can put a price on. What can we put a price on? So something of monetary value. What kinds of losses do you think fall under special damages? Property, goods, St Linda. So I mean, you've just given the example as well of a car accident. There's going to be a specific amount of compensation you're going to want back for the damage to your car, the damage to any property. All of those things are things we can quantify. We can put a number on that and say, this is how much money I need to fix this damage, to compensate me for the loss that I've incurred. If you think about, you know, appointments, hospital appointments, transport costs, if you have to get taxis to those appointments, things like small things like that will also be compensated for. And with loss of earnings as well, I mean, there's the individual loss of earnings, but a lot of the time with quite serious medical issues, a loved one might have to take time off work to look after you, and their loss of earnings should also be covered as well. And then you've also got any kind of medical expenses, if you have to pay for your prescriptions, if you have to have your home adapted a particular way, all of those things are going to cost money that you shouldn't have to pay out of your own pocket if it was an accident that was not your fault, obviously. Now, your general damages are some of the things that you've already mentioned. So we've had stress, emotional distress. Obviously, if you've had a personal injury, whatever injury it is that you've suffered from that medical negligence, that's going to be claimed for as well. But that's really difficult to put a price on sometimes. So pain and suffering is one of the key things that we claim for under general damages, and it's really hard to put a price on that. Similar to loss of amenity. So if you consider, for example, someone who may have a brain injury, and because of that brain injury, they're partial to mood swings, outbursts, that may then impact their family life, their relationships. And that's still a loss, even though we can't put a number on it, it's still a loss that they could claim for. Similar to if, I don't know, you've had medical negligence where they've amputated somebody's wrong leg, and that person actually enjoyed playing football on a Sunday. They can no longer do that, so they should be able to claim for that loss. And that falls under loss of amenity as well.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so with that in mind, we're going to have a look at a couple of scenarios now, and we're going to try and have a think about what we would award in terms of under those general damages, so for pain and suffering and loss of amenity, because although it's difficult to put a monetary value on, of course we still do. And how we determine this is through something called the Judicial College Guidelines. And the Judicial College Guidelines it's a book which gives a range of kind of monetary figures that you can be given dependent on the severity of your injury and how much of an impact they think that will have on your pain and suffering. And then that's adjusted accordingly, because obviously everybody's it's very subjective, isn't it? So what I would find very painful, St Linda might not find painful at all, and Shana might find it completely unbearable, because we're all different. So Boris and his friends are part of a car theft ring in the West Midlands, using a computer to unlock and drive away expensive vehicles with keyless entry. They've identified a Range Rover owned by Suze as their next target, and have had her house under surveillance to determine the best time to try and take the car. Suze has been warned by the local police that the car theft gang is operating in the area, but is not too worried because she knows her car has an electrical fault that means the car is not currently safe to drive. That night, Boris obtains entry to Suze's car using his computer, and as he touches the keyless start button, he suffers a serious electric shock. He falls from the car and sustains a head injury, which results in changes to his personality, effect on his speech, moderate intellect deficit, a significant risk of epilepsy, and as a result has no prospect of future employment. So how much, let's get a starting figure. How much do we think that is likely to be awarded for that, for his pain and suffering and loss of amenity? So we have got a Slido that you can vote on, or you can put it in the chat box. That's absolutely fine. What do we think? Okay, so we've had a couple of votes. Got more people going for the 95 to 125,000, because it's serious money, isn't it? Serious money involved. Okay, so we've got quite a few. Oh, we've got another vote for 140 to 205. So nobody thinks it's at the lower end. Okay, so so it is actually 140,000 to 205,000. That's the tariff, and that because that is classed as a moderate brain injury. So that would be the tariff, 140,000 to 205,000. So let's have a look at another one, and then we'll make a decision about the sort of whether we think it's higher or lower than that. So Magda is so excited that the hairdressers can reopen following lockdown. Magda, you are not alone. And ensured that she had booked an appointment for the day her favourite salon reopened. She decided to try something new, and she'd booked in to have her hair cut and permed, permanent wave. Jacob, her normal stylist, was unavailable, so she'd booked in to have her hair done by Clyde. Unfortunately, Clyde had not carried out a perm on a customer since 1995 and had made the solution too strong. Around 20 minutes after applying the solution to Magda's hair, she noticed her scalp was starting to itch. She mentioned to Clyde, who said it was normal and not to worry. A few minutes later, the itching turned into a burning sensation, and when Clyde looked at Magda's scalp, he saw it was bright red and starting to blister. He immediately rushed Magda over to the sink and removed the rollers, washing her hair in cool water. Magda's hair had become brittle and was snapping off in his hands. Magda has lost the majority of her hair and has been left with painful dermatitis on her scalp. It's unclear whether her hair will ever grow back, and this has left Magda feeling very depressed, and she stopped going out. Okay, so losing your hair, do you think that is something that you are able to claim damages for? What do we think?
So Maria's put yes. Rebecca's put yes. Nimai, sorry, I don't think I've pronounced your name right, but Nimai Joseph has said yes.
Brilliant, because this is actually based on a real case called Nash and Sheen, where a lady went to have a lovely perm done, and they put, to this day, no one knows what chemicals they actually put on her hair, and it actually made her hair turn green and fall out and caused her to have a painful scalp. And that was actually also constituted a battery, because it was an unlawful touching, because she did not consent to having that put on her hair. So we know that the award for Boris was between 140,000 and 205,000. Do you think it's going to be higher or lower than that for Magda? What do we think?
Lower.
Lower?
Yeah.
Does everyone agree?
Yeah, we've got 4 lower in the chat box.
Much lower.
Much lower.
Yeah, of course. And what was the figure, Shana, for Magda?
For Magda was able to claim between £6,890 to £10,340, so it was significantly less.
So, but that you can claim for damage to hair, to loss of hair as well, because there's an appreciation that it does affect you. It can affect your mental state as well. So that's why there is consideration then. You can still claim damages. So let's have a look at Julie then. So Julie works in a factory that makes fittings for bathroom sinks and baths. Julie's job involves packing the steel fittings into bags and packing them into boxes to be sent out to customers. The standard amount due to the weight is 24 packs per box. Julie's employer, Weldless Fittings, has recently tried to be more eco-friendly and has decided that they should increase the number of fittings per box to save on cardboard. Julie has been told she must now pack 36 packs of fittings per box, increasing the weight of the box by 12 kilograms. Unfortunately, the cardboard boxes used by Weldless Fittings are not suitable for the extra weight, and as Julie is lifting a box from her workstation, it splits, dropping all 36 kilograms of fittings onto her foot. Julie suffers several breaks in the bones in her feet, and despite surgery, she's left with a permanent deformity. She's warned that she's likely to develop osteoarthritis in the future and may need further surgery. So what do we think? Do we think it's higher or lower than for Magda?
So Magda was between just over 6,500 to 10,500 roughly. So do we think?
So Rebecca's saying it's higher. Maria says it's higher. Any more?
So the majority have gone higher, and you are correct, it is higher. So the injuries that Julie has suffered are orthopedic injuries. So in the judicial college guidelines, if you look at foot injuries, Rebecca's gone at a rough amount as well. She's put 30,000-ish.
Brilliant.
So foot injuries of that nature will be classed as moderate. So you're talking closer to 13,000 to about 23,500. So if she got the top end of that compensation, you weren't far off, Rebecca.
Brilliant. And then finally then, so Mitchell is training to be a lifeguard and swims at his local pool every morning. The pool is privately owned by Diamond Leisure Parks, and all maintenance is carried out by their employees. Diamond have recently introduced a high-tech entry system where members can just scan their wristband to enter, eliminating the need for reception staff. Mitchell practices his diving daily, often using the high diving board in the main pool. On Monday, Mitchell accessed the site using his wristband without seeing or speaking to any staff members. He entered the pool area as normal and climbed the ladder for the high diving board. Mitchell wears glasses, which he takes off when he's in the pool. As such, he's unable to identify that the water in the pool is somewhat lower than normal. When he dives off the board, there is not sufficient depth to cushion his fall, and he suffers a severe spinal injury resulting in permanent tetraplegia, which means paralysis of all four limbs. Diamond Leisure were refilling the pool after cleaning when the incident happened, and the manager on duty placed a sign at the entrance to the building stating cleaning in progress. So, what do we think? Do you think that's going to be higher or lower than Julie's award for her foot? What do you think? And if it's higher, what do you think the award's likely to be? Because we've gone from 140 to 205 for a moderate brain injury. So what do we think for tetraplegia? Any ideas? What sort of value would we put on that?
So we've got a guess at 33,000.
33. I think we might need a little bit higher. So if we had 140 to 205 for a brain injury, do we think that this injury is more severe than the brain injury?
Lynn's gone with millions.
So we all want Lynn to be the person who's deciding how much compensation we get.
Rebecca's gone for 250,000.
That's a good one.
That's a good guess. Anyone have any more guesses? I'll put you all out of your misery. So it was £304,630 to £379,100. So it was in the 300,000 range. So starting at the low end, top end is close to £380,000 for that type of injury involving paralysis.
Okay, so the reason why you might have noticed with some of these scenarios, so on this one particularly with Mitchell, I'd put some extra information in about that there was a sign at the entrance. Now this is because this is one of the scenarios that I've used in a seminar for the level 4 taught, and when we were looking at the damages, we were also looking at defences. So we were looking at whether there was any defence because they had put a sign at the entrance to say that cleaning was in progress, and the students had to pick apart whether there was any relevant defences that the occupier of the building would be able to use against the negligence claim. So thank you for listening to that. I hope that was interesting. Obviously, if there's any questions, do please let us know, and I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Okay, thanks, Ria, for that. So you've seen quite two ends of the spectrum really here, haven't you? So like criminal law and liability and aspects of civil law and negligence. But there's a whole breadth of law that you'll study. We haven't even touched on areas like property law, housing and welfare, for example, commercial law, sales of goods, international trade and shipping, and the most important area of law, chancery and the role of probate and wills. So those are the kind of things you'll look at. So I'm going to actually now hand over to Maria. So one of the things you'll probably be conscious of, you're thinking of now is I've got my assessments to do. We've come through a very difficult year of the pandemic. It's still here, it hasn't gone. What is my teaching going to look like? We'll talk a bit about that towards the end, and please do have some questions for the panel today. Any questions you want to ask us, please do ask them. But one of the things is, what support will you get? Now, Margaret's talked about obviously her role as head of department responsible for you as a group of students in the entire 3 years. Then you have people like Rebecca Mincher, who hasn't joined us today, but she'll be your level 4 tutor, and Lynn, who'll look after you in level 5, and Margaret, and to some extent myself at level 6. But I'm going to invite Maria to explain. Maria, can you just tell us what your role is and what the students can expect from you?
Hello guys, sorry, I'm trying to turn my camera on and it just won't let me, and I don't want to risk leaving the room to never come back, because I won't come back, guys. So I'm just going to share my screen.
Okay, that's fine.
Bear with me.
Yeah, we can see that.
So like Linda said, I'm the student transition teacher for the law school, and I'm just going to quickly go through some of the roles and the services at the university that have been created to essentially help you adapt to university life. But before I get onto that, and before I allow you to get to know me, I want to get to know you all a little bit better. So I'm just going to share this Jamboard with you all. And if you bear with me, I'm just going to copy the link and put that into the chat. I would like you all to jump into this, and then I will share my screen so I can see you all joining. Staff members, if you want to join, feel free if you can. And what I'd like you all to think of is, if you were stranded on a desert island and you could enforce one law on this desert island, what would you enforce, or what rule would you enforce? I started you all off with banning Mariah Carey because I can't stand her. You can make it as serious, as fun as you like.
So where do we type in, Maria?
So, oh, sorry, I should have gone through that. So if you just click on sticky note, you can type into that and press save, or you can use the text box and just type in. Sakninda, because you're not a pilot, you can't fly us out.
All right.
I know that's a touchy subject. That's a sensible one. So there's about 3 of you that are here. So as soon as I've got about 3 or 4 responses from the students, I'll let you put you all out of your misery. As long as the pets don't eat us on this desert island, I'm fine with that. And the 5 meals a day, someone's being very positive if we combined 5 meals a day. I like the pizza every day though. Right, brilliant. So I brought this in because this is actually a platform that I use with a lot of my students, and I'm sure a lot of other teaching staff use them as well. And it's really good because everybody's anonymous. So I don't know who's wrote pizzas every day because they're an absolute legend. But I don't know. So if we were in a lecture and you wanted to ask a question, what most staff do is at the end of the session, they put up a Jamboard and say, if you've got a question, put it on a sticky note. And that's how we tend to sort of answer questions like that at the beginning, just to get you all comfortable with working and asking questions, okay? And if you bear with me, I'll just get back to my PowerPoint. So as well as my role, you've also got the role of an academic coach. Now, everybody transitioning into the university, be that from college or sixth form or work, or if you haven't been in education, you've had a break for numerous years or 1 or 2 years, you will be given an academic coach. Okay, and this academic coach will help you settle into university. They will be there to help you if you don't know where to begin, if you need support in making the right decision. They can give you advice when you're confused, and guidance if you're just feeling lost generally. They can be as hands-on and hands-off as you want them to be, okay? So you have your set meetings with them, and it's up to you how you use them essentially. They are a great sort of starting point to go. So if you've got any questions and you don't know where to get help, they're a great contact point, because if they don't know the answer, which is very rare that they don't know the answer, but what they can do is signpost you to the person that does know the answer, okay? And as they are a coach, and being a coach, they're able to help you develop both personally. So if you come to us and say, I'm really struggling with my confidence, they can help you build that. And they can also coach you through your first semester with your academic skills as well, okay? So that's why they are there. They are there to help create autonomous students in you by the end of level 4, okay? Now, you've also got my role, the student transition role, and I'm very similar to an academic coach, but my focus is on your academic growth. This means you'll find me teaching in your level 4 modules. You'll also see me floating around, and I'll always give you my email address every time you see me, and that's because I'm available here for you for one-to-one support and group tutorials. If there's a particular topic or area that you're struggling with, I can support you on that. And generally, a lot of people come to me with academic skills issues, so that's referencing if you haven't written in a while, so it's academic writing, structure, grammar, punctuation, that sort of stuff. And finally, the key thing in my role is making sure that you as students are comfortable with the assessment types at university, because you might come across things that you've never had to do before, like a presentation or a certain law report. I'm here to help you unpack the language that's used and tell you what you need to be doing for those assignments, essentially, with the help of the other staff, because I know they're amazing and they will help you too. Okay, other services available at the university, and what we've got is the Academic Skills Hub. So that's available to you as students at any level, where you can submit a piece of work and somebody can go through it and give you some help in your structure, your feedback, your academic writing, your sources. Then you've also got the Skills for Learning Centre in the library, and that's purely there to help you build up on certain key things like your IT skills, again, your writing, your referencing, and that's held by the university's library staff in smaller groups to help you become comfortable with those things. And then if English isn't your second language, which it isn't from some of us, we've got the academic English skills course online, which is a free course that you can uptake on Canvas alongside your studies to help work on your academic English language. And then alongside that, because we really want you to enjoy your time at university, but we appreciate sometimes things pop up in the way, we've got mental health and wellbeing support, and we've got our student union to help you make new friends and get involved in things that you like and enjoy. Okay, so now if you go back onto the Jamboard that you were on previously, what I would like all of you to share with me is one thing that you're looking forward to about studying law or starting university. And I'm reflecting on something that I was really excited about when I was a student or first became a student, and that was student discount. And a secret between all of us, I still use my student discount. And I will just jump back onto the Jamboard. So if you go onto the Jamboard, can you all see that? There's a second page. So just skip onto the second page, and that's where you can add your note. I've got us all started, and I've said I'm really looking forward to meeting all of you new students. Whoever's told me they're really excited about learning new things, what are you excited in particular about learning? Is there something you've got in mind? Whoever put student rail card, I'm happy to see that you're so brave to use the train after the session you've had today. All great stuff. I'm excited to be back in the classroom too. Brilliant. I think that must have been all of you sharing everything now. Brilliant. I'm going to stop you there. That's all I'm going to go through. What I am going to share in the chat is my email address. So if any of you have got any questions about university and coming here, you can drop me an email at any point. Okay.
Thanks, Maria. So Maria's put her email in the chat, but obviously you won't do that because this is a public forum. But you can contact Maria. Indeed, you can contact any one of the team today. So thank you, Maria, for that really important information. So there's been quite a lot going on. And one of the things that I would emphasize is that, you know, we're hoping to be back in the classroom in September. And I know Margaret's been working really hard in sorting out your timetable and making your timetable work as efficiently for you when you do join in September. But we've also got a very brilliant platform with some of our colleagues, and Lynn's here today, who have been instrumental in designing the delivery of what we call blended learning. So lots of stuff goes on to the we call it Canvas. That's our kind of VLE, Blackboard, whatever you call it. So pre-recorded lectures. Where do I find myself this week? What am I supposed to be doing in this lecture? What should I be reading before the lecture? What should I aim to get out of the lecture? And any further reading. So that's really, really something we're very proud of. And in fact, our Vice Chancellor shared that concept with the Office of Students, which regulates university education in the UK, which was really pleasing for us. So obviously we've talked a lot today. Don't be shy. You know, ask some questions, you know, some burning questions you have. You know, what will happen when I come in September? How do I enroll? What will happen if I don't quite make the grades? Well, if you don't quite make the grades, I mean, if you're putting us down as your first choice and you definitely wanting to come to Wolverhampton, what we will do as an admissions team, Margaret and myself, when we look at your applications, we've got an element of discretion if you've got commitment. So we can talk about that. But, you know, if you want to unmute yourself or if you want to just put stuff in the chat box, just please do ask us any questions. I'm going to obviously hand over to Margaret for kind of final things to say, but as the head of the school, and the school is a big school because we've got obviously Margaret's department, undergraduate legal studies, we've got a professional law and practice part of the school, which covers things like professional training. We have a sort of like a tangent to that is the SILEX, Chartered Legal Executive Delivery, which RIA looks after. So there's lots of stuff going on. I personally look forward to seeing you in September, welcome you to a friendly law school, and where you know you will really thrive if you do what your tutors like today have told you. So I'll pause there, and then please do ask questions. You must have a few questions. So if you haven't got any questions, I'm now just going to hand over to Margaret, and I think she'll also thank her team for being here today, and she'll have a few final words to say to you. So it was good to see you all, and over to you, Margaret.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Sukninder. So yes, a very big thank you to all my colleagues for presenting this afternoon. I think that you've been able to see a good flavour of the different subjects that you will be starting to tackle in first year. As Sukninder has said, we are a really supportive law school, and whatever barriers you might encounter along the way, as long as you let us know, you know, we're there to help you. And although we can't fix every problem, we're, you know, we come pretty close to fixing every problem, and we certainly go out of our way to do so. We have got an open day coming up. It's on the 12th of June. So if any of you haven't attended one of our open days already, then I would strongly encourage you to come along to that. It is an online open day, so you may instead want to wait until August, and we have an open day in August, which is on Saturday the 14th of August. So Saturday the 12th of June, an online open day, and Saturday the 14th, when all the restrictions hopefully have lifted, will be an open day on campus. So do think about coming along to one or both of those events.
Okay, Margaret. So Lee, our colleague from admissions, Lee's typed in. So do you want to say a few words, Lee? Because you're going to close this event, aren't you?
Yeah. Thanks all for today. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned lots of stuff about law. So thank you all. It has been really enjoyable and interactive. Feedback on our events are really important. It helps us get them right for you guys, our applicants and people interested. So there is a link in the chat at the moment for a Slido. So if you could please go there and just fill in some feedback, that would be really appreciated. If you are interested in finding anything else out to do with the university, such as accommodation, or speak to myself about fees and finance, or find out about admissions, careers, anything we can do to support your journey coming to university, the event is still continuing on a platform called Chatify, which is sort of an online platform where you can type in questions and hopefully we can get them answered for you. The link for that is also in the chat as well. So just nip over to the chat and have a look at those two links, and then obviously, you know, leave us some feedback, and please come and speak to us on Chatify about any other questions you might have. So I would like to thank all our academics today for being so engaging, and to all our attendees as well for coming along and taking part in the session. And then if everyone's all done, if there are no questions in the chat, if you want to just click leave room and then leave meeting, you'll be able to go about your evening and hopefully enjoy the rest of your evening. A bit of sun outside I can see through the window. So thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.
Hi there. Yeah, the 6 to 7 meeting, it isn't taking part on Zoom. It is actually taking part on Chatify. If you have a look on the chat function, you can get that either at the top of your screen if you're on the mobile or at the bottom of your screen if you're on the laptop. I've just popped the link in the chat there for you. No problem. Thanks for coming along.